Chapter 7 Old Silvernails Arrives. It was in the spring, in the time of hope and fresh beginnings, that the inhabitants of New Amsterdam crowded around the little landing place near the fort to wave their broad hats in welcome to the new governor. Their indifference to civic affairs was fast disappearing, and with more than idle curiosity, they watched the figure that stepped off the boat from Curaçao, a haughty figure that moved with the air of a prince, in spite of its silver-banded wooden leg. New Amsterdam had probably heard of the wooden leg, for Governor Peter Stuyvesant had earned it during an enviable military career, and the current nickname of Old Silvernails was one that doubtless offended the stern old soldier least of all. The smooth-shaven face suggested strength, efficiency, and a scholarly intelligence. There was, besides, a hopeful note in the speech he made to his enthusiastic new subjects on this occasion. "I shall be a father to you," he promised, and how the Dutch must have waved their broad-brimmed hats at that. Very soon, however, the discouraged colonists learned that fatherly conduct meant stamping his wooden leg at them, flying into rages when wise advice ran counter to his policies, and, in short, letting them have their own way about nothing whatever. Fortunately, the Stuyvesant way was a good one in most respects, and between the years 1647 and 1664 he managed to bring about many reforms in New Netherland. The Dutch houses, with their brass knockers and curious gabled ends of checkered black and yellow bricks, were kept spotlessly clean, but the narrow, crooked little streets that often followed the original cow paths about the lower part of the island were filthy, and these Stuyvesant promptly ordered to be cleaned, and, in some cases, straightened out into dignified thoroughfares. Many taverns had opened here and there in the settlement, for a large part of the population was engaged in brewing. The new governor now took these in hand, making rules about the length of supper parties and the charges for meals and other accommodations. Instead of learning to read and write, the boys and girls of New Amsterdam were helping with the work, and this condition of affairs shocked Governor Stuyvesant, who had children of his own. Through his encouragement, education began to prosper, and by the early 60s, the prestige of the Dutch colony's Latin school under Aegidius Wyck, a former tutor of the Stuyvesant children, had spread beyond the boundaries of New Netherland, and was attracting pupils from many of the neighboring New England towns. Governor Stuyvesant found a rather scattered population at the beginning of his rule. Under Kieft, most of the land on Long Island had been purchased from the Canarsies, the first real estate deal in the present borough of Brooklyn having been the exchange of Coney from the Indian Conynge, or rabbit, island for a single pound of shot. Religious persecution had driven many English settlers into the present Queensborough and Westchester County from New England, for the West India Company recognized tolerance as a sound commercial policy, and no witches were ever burned on New York soil. The family of Anne Hutchinson had accordingly settled in the region of New Rochelle. The Pell family had come to give their name to Pelham. At Gravesend, a grant was given to the English Lady Moody, while Kieft had permitted one Thomas Styles and his associates to incorporate the town of Flushing, Vlissingen. These growing little communities kept their English customs, but they submitted in a half-hearted way to the rule of a Dutch governor. Dutch farms, or boweries, had sprung up here and there in the western part of Long Island, and a few houses clustered together at what is now the Brooklyn end of the Fulton Ferry, while near the close of Kieft's term, Jan Evertsen Bout and a few others made a permanent settlement about a mile farther inland. This was incorporated as Broekelen, or Broken Ground, and when the English later altered the name to Brookland, it more nearly suggested the modern Brooklyn. Over on Staten Island, there had been attempts made to start a village called Oude Dorp, or Old Town, and Patroon Mellon in 1640 had set up at the Narrows a kind of marine telegraph in the form of a white flag that warned of approaching vessels, but most of the settlements made before Stuyvesant's time were wiped out by Indian raids. On Manna-Hatin, the grant to Dr. de la Montagne formed the germ of modern Yorkville, and farther north, the present Bronx borough was being formed by the energetic Jonas Bronk, from whom it takes its name. The New Netherland, over which Governor Peter Stuyvesant was sent to rule in 1647, was thus very far from being a compact, prosperous little community. Kieft's mistakes had made the colonists suspicious of all rulers. The menace of Indian massacre still hovered in the air, while the hour of contest between the English and the Dutch over the possession of the land drew nearer and nearer.